Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talking Insights. I'm your host, Antonio, and in today's episode, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and universally human dimensions of our industry feelings. I'm joined today by Tara House from TRA and Thomas Gosnodczyk from DDB, winners of the Excellence in Global Research Awards for their groundbreaking project, the Feelings Toolkit. Now, this ambitious global study is set to decode how emotion shapes our decisions, our cultures, and even our relationships with brands. Through expert interviews, qualitative discovery, and a massive multi-country qualitative rollout, the project uncovers both the universality and deep cultural nuances behind the emotions we live every day. It's a great conversation where we discussed feelings, how they can be measured at scale, why emotional nuances matter for brands, and what the findings of the project reveal about the human experience around the world. And of course, we look at what's next for the Feelings Toolkit, how it can potentially reshape how insights teams kind of understand people. So without further ado, here's Tara and Thomas to tell us all about it. Tara, Thomas, welcome to the show. Welcome to Talking Insights. And first and foremost, congratulations on your awards, Excellence in Global Research. And this is actually a very global project. We're all in different parts of the world, but the project is not about different parts of the world in this sense, but it's about feelings and the feelings all around the world. I wanna know more about the project. I wanna know what was the initial goal of creating the Feelings Toolkit. Can someone explain me what the whole project was about?
Nice. Thanks, Antonio. Thank you for having us. It's great to be here. I think maybe I'll start it. I think we can kind of get into it together. Again, it's great to be here with you. What I would say is in marketing in general, there's an established truth that emotions drive business outcomes. I think as DDB's founder, Bill Bernbach, said, unless people feel it, nothing will happen. And we know not only that it kind of sounds nice as a thought, but there is marketing science and evidence that proves that brands that with emotional connection tend to achieve better outcomes, right? Whether that's price sensitivity, whether it's better return on their marketing investment. And also, I think it just makes people like the brands more and come to their rescue when needed. But outside of that science, actually what we found with the team from the TRA is that there's not a great deal of actually useful, globally applicable quant methodology to allow us to put a scalable framework around how emotions impact the human experience. So I think over the last year and a half or so, we got on a journey to try and codify that, how emotions impact our lives as people, across cultures, across languages, across geographies, to give us a toolkit and a way of thinking about how emotions impact our lives. And that's how Phil's Barometer was born.
And can you walk us through the different stages or the different phases of the project? Because you started with some interviews, and then there's some exploration, some qualitative exploration. Can you walk us through the different phases?
Yeah, sure. I can walk us through that. So, as Tomas mentioned, we really set out to create this distinct and powerful feelings toolkit. So, a framework to really decode feelings through projection, but in a way that hadn't really been done before. So, what we created was a methodology that essentially measured the feelings associated with 100 topics. And these were anchored in the human experience. So everything from big or small, serious to frivolous, collective to the individual. We really wanted to anchor it into the everyday kind of human experience and what the feelings are associated with those. And what that would do is enable people at DDB to really understand how they could apply those feelings to brands, how they could connect with people, but also identify the tensions where people kind of, I guess, had mixed feelings in these everyday experiences. So, in a nutshell, we interviewed 8 experts on emotions and feelings research. We did qualitative exploration with people in Australia and India. And then we piloted the survey in 5 countries, and then did the full study in 8 countries. So in total, we surveyed over 16,000 people. So I can go into a little bit more detail if you want.
No, I mean, I want to know more about, because you were mentioning that the whole project it's a global project. There's a bunch of different cultures, countries, languages involved. Was it difficult to ensure that this toolkit worked across all of these spectrums, across different cultures and the language and the whole demographics? Was it difficult?
Yeah, so I guess we set out for this project to be a multi-phased project, and we wanted to do that in an iterative way so that we could kind of learn from each phase. And so with the expert consultation, that phase was really a foundational stage for us to understand the different ways that feelings are currently measured. So we spoke to people that were like experts in color and understanding feelings. We spoke to, experts in love. We spoke to a different range of experts so that we could really get a foundational understanding of what we could start to use to unpick feelings in a universal way across cultures. The qualitative discovery phase was really for us to start to understand what was universal and maybe what wasn't. So that phase in Australia and India was for us to start testing different projective techniques that we might end up using within our quantitative survey. So we explored everything from language, from color, temperature, shapes, even sound and food, really to understand like what we could actually use within this universal toolkit. And that was a really interesting phase because what we found was that the simpler projectives were the ones that were most successful in being universal. So people used kind of shapes and colours the same way across those 2 cultures to express positive feelings or negative feelings. Whereas what we saw with images that had lots of layers or photography, that was very subjective. Someone could interpret a picture of a cave with a shaft of light coming down as hope. Another person might interpret that as doom. So that was really a way that we could, explore what worked and what didn't. And from there, we were able to then design the quantitative pilot. So that was, as I mentioned, piloted in 5 different countries. And that was creating the qualitative projective toolkits and putting that into a quantitative environment. And from there, that phase was really set out to design, is it universal? Are people using color in the same way to express negative emotions? Or are people using shapes or body sensations to represent different types of emotions? So from that pilot phase, we made some tweaks, and then we went into the full launch, which of course was across 8 different countries with 100 statements in each of those countries.
Beyond the business results, there's this project also tells us a bit about the universality of everything, but also the cultural nuances of the human emotions. Can you explore a bit more about this? What does this project explore, about the cultural nuances?
Yeah, I can go into some more detail of that. So right from the start of this project, we wanted to be clear in the way that we defined feelings and emotions. So emotions being more of the physiological response in our bodies. So it's that like flight, fright, or freeze response. And that's more of that physiological kind of gut feeling, as you would say, or kind of that feeling that you get in your body. Whereas feelings are almost the way that you interpret that. So that can be kind of shaped by your context that you're in, your culture itself, even things, the fact that feelings are kind of multifaceted as well. We can feel both positive feelings and negative feelings at the same time. A bit like nostalgia, for instance. It's a mix of being happy and it's a mix of being sad or having that longing feeling. So, I mean, that definition really helped us from the get-go because everyone is human at the end of the day. We all feel emotions within our body, but the culture in which we are in shapes the way that we interpret those emotions. And when we were able to roll this out across all the different kind of countries and cultures, what we were able to find was that of those 100 statements that we measured, of the 90 universal ones that we explored in each of those countries, actually only 29 of those statements were shared in sentiment. So it meant that all of the rest of them were actually nuanced in the way that people felt about them. And that nuance could come from, the fact that maybe different cultures experience feelings differently. So, we found that the US and Germany feel negative feelings more intensely. And we found that Spain feel positive feelings more intensely, and they actually had a higher proportion of those 90 statements that sat within kind of more positive feelings. But that nuance can also come at a statement level as well. And so what we found, even like as an example here, was getting hacked or scammed, what that feels like. Of course, that's going to be a negative feeling for anyone. No one wants to get hacked or scammed. But we did find that there was nuance in different countries. So in Australia, for instance, that felt more like intense violation. And we saw, quite deep sensations like feeling drained and knotted, or quite jagged shapes, really conveying that sense of chaos and distress, and language of really people feeling kind of almost cheated and robbed. Whereas in France, it was kind of more of this sense of betrayal, the fact that they felt like their personal boundaries had been broken. And then in Spain, it was kind of the sense of powerlessness, like you couldn't actually do anything. And we were able to get to that nuance by both understanding the results of the projective techniques, like color, like shape, like sensation, even intensity as well. But we were also able to overlay people's kind of open-ended language that they chose to describe that feeling, really to kind of help understand the tone in which that negative feeling was experienced.
And I think just to build on that a little bit, I think it's, and thank you for laying it out. And what I think to me is fascinating is when it comes to the question around, for instance, what does it feel like to buy something on credit? In the US, I think that feeling was of creating something for yourself, rewarding myself for all the hard work, for how far I've made it in life. In many European countries, that was actually interpreted as moral bankruptcy. And I'm actually getting something ahead of what's actually supposed to be mine. And I think that sort of a nuance has got profound implication if you're a global brand manager as to how you position, how you develop your value proposition, how you message that proposition to the market. And I think that to me is the power of the study, because I think prior to that, of course, there are wonderful kind of brand perception kind of studies out there. But I think once you get to the level of motion, you understand at a more fundamental level how people go about engaging in their lives. I think what I particularly loved about our approach is I think we very much focused on people's lives. We didn't necessarily focus on the role of brands in people's lives because we wanted to understand how people go about making decisions that truly impact them as individuals, them as family members, as colleagues, as members of society. And I think that to me gives you a really fundamental, enduring understanding of how people actually go about living and making decisions and feeling.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about it, but it's very interesting the way that the credit situation that you were saying, like the way that it's perceived all around the world. It's very interesting, and it's sometimes things that we didn't even think about. What's next for the project and for the Feelings Toolkits? Is it just stopping here? Do you have any future developments? Any things that you are working on that you can share with us?
I think one I would say is thank you very much for the recognition, because I think it's been fantastic to find a moment and the investment and the focus to prove that once we understand feelings at scale, we are able to do something about them. And then when it comes to what we've been able to kind of do with the research, I think it's become kind of day-to-day tool for all of our teams around the world to understand how brands can play into and understand and empathize more with people's lives. And I think that has led to kind of true appreciation of the nuance of how people live, and then also how brands can go about shifting their positioning to more effectively engage with that mindset, that kind of state that people are in. So I think what's ahead for us is really kind of taking the methodology and applying it in kind of two ways. One, I think continuously understanding how feelings shape our culture and how culture shape our feelings. And we want to do that on an ongoing basis. As Tara mentioned, I think we've looked at 90 statements universally around the world. And I think there is a lot of work and a lot of great insights to be garnered from what does that mean over time, but then also what does that mean if you say dig deeper into specific aspects of people's existence. So I think we want to go absolutely deeper. And then secondly, what's the feels barometer for brands? I think how in the category, if you think about it from category entry point standpoint, how is my brand doing, right? Like how emotionally connected are we? And the fact that we have a globally scalable quantitative toolkit that to allow us, a methodology to allow us to do that, is incredibly powerful, because you can not only compare yourself as a brand to the category entry point, you can also compare yourself to the rest of your competition. And I think that becomes really important as to how you prioritize emotional messaging, rational messaging, type of feelings you actually want to connect with in consumers or in consumers' lives. And that is exactly, I think, probably one of the most relevant debates that any marketer would be having around the world right now. There are two aspects to it. I think both of them are really important to us in the way we think about kind of our contribution to the marketing discourse, but then also our competitive advantage. And I think lastly is, I think all of that together gives us a really rich attitudinal data set that you can't exactly find elsewhere. And I think that's got implications in how you think about your media investment, how you think about kind of the broader marketing mix as well. So to me, with the kind of year one of the project, we were able to pioneer a new methodology, and I think we're in the world of really productizing it and scaling across everything that we do.
I want to finish with a question. Do you have any advice for other insights teams or insights professionals that are looking to measure something as complex and sometimes very intangible as feelings?
Ooh, yes, I can go. I think the thing with that is really understanding how feelings are shaped, and sometimes what the problems are with measuring feelings as well. So, I mean, as part of this exploration, we looked at all the different types of ways that we could measure feelings, things such as facial expressions or words. But the problems with those were that, often there's so many different types of words for feelings across different cultures, across different languages. There's been recent studies that have been done to kind of debunk the universality of facial expressions as well. So, walking down the street, you might smile at someone and that might be friendly in one culture. It might kind of look crazy in another. But I think the advice I'd say there is to really understand the nuances of feelings and what can sometimes be the downfalls of it. We can't always describe our feelings in the way that we want to. So by using projective techniques and almost getting quite creative in the way that you capture those is going to get you much richer insights.
And I would say it's, I think people are beautifully, annoyingly irrational. And I think as an insights professional, I think it's our responsibility to be respectful of that and endeavor to represent that in rooms where it matters as much as possible. Because I think what we found, and I think that's been a very rewarding part for me as part of this project, is I think emotions and feelings are prelingual. I think they're shaped by our culture, they're shaped by our lives, but if we rely on sentiment analysis of what people are saying about how they feel, we're introducing so much bias already that it doesn't necessarily represent how people actually feel. And that to me is really important. And in more recent tests, I think we're seeing when you try to use kind of AI-driven techniques, for instance, to kind of derive emotional state out of large quantities of text, for instance, whether that's social listening, etc. You simply don't get to the level of nuance and detail and representation that Tara was describing. So, to me, it's annoying and it's laborious, but I think that's what humanity is all about. And I think at a time when I think many companies are actually feeling quite disconnected, quite distant from the market in which they operate, the communities in which they operate, I think going deeper and taking the time, I think is fundamental, because we could very easily end up in a world where there is a representation of how people feel and how people act, and then the actual reality of what's going on in people's lives. And I think bridging that, that's our responsibility, and that's what I'm proud of with this specific research, that we're able to kind of take the time and the focus to get as close to actual people as possible.
It's definitely a complex topic, a very interesting one, and a very interesting and awesome project that you created. Congratulations, Tara and Thomas, again for not only the award, but the way that you presented the project, and for creating the project in itself. So thank you so much. Thanks so much for conversation, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let me stop it. And that's all for today, folks. Talking Insights is a production of Research World and SMR, bringing you the stories, voices, and ideas shaping the Insights community around the world. If you'd like to be featured in a future episodes, share your story, or learn more about sponsoring opportunities, send us an email at podcast@smr.org. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And join us next week for another great conversation. See ya.